So I woke up that morning with texts on my phone saying that there was a police operation going on, that they had surrounded the forest, and that they were coming into the forest with many armed police officers and canines, and they had a history. There's a history of violence from police on nonviolent protesters in this forest. They've used tear gas. They've used military-grade CS gas. They've used pepper bullets. They've used rubber bullets, and they've sent dogs after people. So I knew that I was afraid for my life, honestly, and I was afraid for the lives of my friends for good reason, apparently. And so I came out of my tent, and I started walking around the forest trying to figure out exactly what was going on. And police, the police saw me in the forest and yelled, like very intimidatingly, said, this is the police. We have a canine. Don't get bit. Don't get bit. And so I ran, and I was afraid for my life, and I ran and I hid. And then when they found me, they just kept threatening me with the dog. They said, we're gonna send the dog in, and you put your hands up, put your hands up. And I was yelling at my feet to them, and I was yelling like, my feet are towards you, like my hands are up, but I don't know if you can see, like I'm not doing anything. And so they pulled me out, and they flipped me over and put me on the ground, the whole time never once said what I was being charged with, or why I was being detained. They handcuffed me and they brought me out of the forest. Once they brought me out, I believe it was APD that was arresting me, but there was GBI there was state troopers, there was DeKalb, and once I got out, it was a whole range of tons of different officers, and they searched me again, not telling me why I was being detained, and they took my phone, and I just had like snacks and water in my pockets too. They took all that, and I still haven't got my phone back. I don't think I'll ever get my phone back because I was searched illegally before I was even in the jail, so there's no record of my possessions. And they repeated, did not tell me why I was being detained, what crime I committed, and then after I was photographed, they put me in the prisoner transport van and took me to I believe it was Gresham Park, where they had a big staging area with well over 100 cars and agents, and it was just completely crawling with federal agents, state agents, local agents, and they tried to interrogate me. They finally read me my Miranda rights in that tent after I had been handcuffed and thrown around, and kidnapped essentially. And so they finally read me my Miranda rights. I'd like to speak to a lawyer, and they immediately stopped the interview process. They didn't even try to call me a lawyer. When I asked to call for a phone call, they laughed at me, and then they took me to the DeKalb sheriff's office. And then I would say from there, it was a much more normal process of being fingerprinted and documented.
Off the bat, please explain for folks how you became associated with the Cop City protest, why you're protesting at Cop City, and some of the important background items that you think people should know about.
So I've been involved with activism for the past maybe 2 years, and the people defending the forest, they've been defending the forest for the past year, and they did a sort of a tour around different radical spaces throughout the country, and people spoke on the issue and informed activists around the country. So then I heard from somebody who went to one of those talks, and so then I came down in the fall, and I got to see the camp, I would say at its height, when there's tons of infrastructure, way abundance of food, propane stoves, and tons of extra free clothes, yeah, it's extremely beautiful city, a heavily wooded city, and so in a lot of cities there's not a situation like this where there is actually forest available. You would have to clear out human projects to build a forest, whereas here this forest has been growing for the past 60 years, and so it's well established, and it's something that can be saved. and should continue to be part of this forest. In that forest, I found tons of all sorts of mushrooms and lichens and stuff. One of them, usnea, is an indicator of good air quality, and there's a lot of usnea in that forest. It's just an extremely peaceful place where you can finally feel some kind of connection to this earth that we all stand on the same earth every day. And in Weelaunee, you can feel it because the trees are allowed to be free.
Point did you realize that they had murdered your friend?
I heard the gunshots early on, just a couple minutes after I woke up, and I assumed there had been some people passing through the night before that I didn't really know very well, and it seemed like some people in the chats thought it might have been them, and I just assumed it was these people I didn't know because I didn't want to assume that it was somebody I knew, and I had no knowledge of anybody in the forest even having a weapon, and certainly that no one had discussed with me any intent of violence. The entire point of this protest is that we are just sitting in public space and sitting in trees, and we are not on the offensive. We are on the defensive. We're defending a forest from being clear cut to build a offensive and frankly offensive military facility that is going to be used for violence against the people.
So this is not the first raid that they have had on the park. There's been a series of raids. What were some of the other things that had happened previously?
So like I said, they've pepper sprayed and tear gassed peaceful protesters for sitting in trees. That's how they try to get them out of the trees, to basically torture them until they have to come down. They trashed their infrastructure. They're basically treating us like enemy combatants. There's a public paved bike path that leads into the woods that's for the public use, and we would use to cart wagons full of our supplies, food, water, clothing, after the raid where they were able to remove 6 forest defenders, Brian Millsap took that opportunity to send in his crews to excavate, and they carved a path through the forest. They tore up the bike path, this paved bike path. They ripped up the parking lot, totally tore it to shreds. And then there was in the sort of base camp, we had a kitchen with tons of food and medical supplies and different literature, different things that people, it was our home. So essentially they came into our kitchen, came into our living room, and threw everything on the ground. They slashed every single tarp and tent they could find to make them as unusable as possible. They buried things in mud. We had built a clay sort of dirt oven, and after weeks of digging and piling mud, they went through the effort of pulling away the mud. This is how spiteful these people are. And so yeah, if you've seen footage of an extremely messy camp, that was because I don't remember if it was the police or if it was Ryan Millsap's people or both. They came through and trashed our camp. That was previously, a home. It was a space that was meant for gathering and for peace and love, community.
So the police are saying there's no body cam footage of what happened, which seems kind of difficult to swallow given how many agencies were involved in this raid. Did you see any of the officers with body cam cameras on their bodies?
The situation was too traumatic and hectic for me to really even be aware. I don't even remember the names of the men who arrested me. Not that they told me their names, but I've been told that there is photography or video footage of the police near the location where my friend was shot, and soon after, with body cams on their person.
Okay, so interesting. At what point did they tell you they were going to charge you with domestic terrorism? I want to talk about this for a minute, and I also feel like we need to explain to the audience that this is not a federal charge, this is a state charge. In 2017, Georgia passed a very broad language bill that in the wake of the North Carolina Charleston church shooting, it was supposed to be used against hate crimes, but it's very broadly worded, so they're now using it against you guys. It feels to me as if they're trying to criminalize First Amendment rights. It's that broad. At what point did they let you know that's what they were going to use to charge you, and how do you feel about that?
They did not tell me what I was being charged with. When they were apprehending me, when they were handcuffing me, when they were dragging me out of the forest, when they were putting me in the police van, at no moment did they tell me why I was being arrested. When I was being interviewed, interrogated by GBI and FBI, there was even an ICE agent there. They did not tell me why I was being arrested. When I asked for a call with the lawyer, they laughed in my face. They finally read me my Miranda rights in that interrogation, and it wasn't until I was in the jail, having already waited for hours to be processed. They were processing me and getting my fingerprints, and they muttered to each other domestic terrorism. So that was all I knew about my charges at that time. And it wasn't until I spoke with my lawyer that I actually knew what my charges were.
How did you finally get in contact with your lawyer? Obviously, eventually they had to give you your right to do that, but was there a period of time?
So they were out. It was pretty much a complete 24 hours in the holding cell. At least one night, it was probably, I don't remember exactly, but well over 12 hours in a holding cell with no phone call. And once we were finally released into a pod with other inmates who were waiting on bail, we were supposed to be given an ID number that would let us call. My ID number didn't work, but an inmate allowed me to use their phone. So I was able to use another inmate's collect call to call the lawyer and finally get in contact with people on the outside.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about this 2017 law and the fact that they're using it against you folks and calling you domestic terrorists. And it's not just you; it's also several of the protesters that they arrested on Saturday night. One of whom was really just marching with a banner.
Yeah. So as far as I understand the law, it basically says if you commit a felony in the process of obstructing something that's being done for the public good. So, of course, the state, by definition, does everything in the public good. Anything the state does is for the public good. So if you do anything to stop the state from doing what they want to do, and you commit a felony, you are a domestic terrorist. Now, they're trying to get the felony charge. They're trying to say that we were in cahoots with Tort, and we all planned this shooting of this police officer. That they were trying to get us on an aggravated assault. I did not know anything about that. None of us knew anything about that. And it seems like Tort didn't even have a gun. So this whole thing is completely shady as hell. And so that's the way the charge works, is that you tried to stop the government from doing what they wanted to do and you committed a felony. So they don't even have a felony on us. And the idea that stopping the government from doing something it wants to do is a crime is pretty clearly infringing on freedom of speech, because the whole point of freedom of speech is that you're able to say, hey, I think the government is doing something bad. And actually, maybe by definition, what the government does is not actually the public good. And we were exercising our right to freedom of speech. We were peacefully sitting in a public park, using our bodies to prevent destruction. And because part of our exercise of freedom of speech was speaking out against the police and the state and the capitalists, those three bodies came together and realized that they have to do whatever they can to stop us, because the more our message gets out there, the more people will realize what this country, what is going on in Georgia, what's going on in Atlanta, what's going on across the country, what's going on across the world. This country terrorizes people with its military might to extract resources and extract labor from people.
So you mentioned earlier that when Tort was shot, you weren't really sure what was going on. It was in the distance. I want to talk a little bit more about that, because my understanding is that there's charges that are coming to the entire group where they're trying to say it was a conspiracy charge where you guys were all in cahoots on this officer getting shot. How could they possibly make that determination if you were, in a different part of the forest and other people were in different areas? Can you give us a rundown on that?
Yeah, well, so like I said, they're basically treating us like enemy combatants. They're assuming that we're some kind of organized military kind of counterinsurgency or something. What we are is a decentralized movement. We're individuals who are making our own choices, and we come together because we share common interests, but we do not make any kind of centralized plan. And as far as I knew, no one had any arms in the forest at all. And all I knew at the time of my arrest, well, at the time of my kidnapping, was that I had heard gunshots in the distance. I didn't know that there was an officer shot. I didn't know that my friend had been killed. And the officers had not asked me about any of that situation. They did not tell me that I was involved with that. They were essentially silent throughout my search and kidnapping. So, and I didn't even know that my friend had been killed until I was already in jail for hours. The news trickled in that there had been an officer shot and that we were going to be, they were trying to get us all on aggravated assault. This was not told to me by the police. This was told to me from some person who somehow heard the news in the cell. And some of the other inmates and I realized that we thought it might be tort because they're not a citizen, they're a person of color, so they would have been targeted by the police.
So let's talk a little bit about the two park situations. The Cop City Park area, that's definitely trespassing. That's government-owned property, whether it's the Police Foundation, City of Atlanta, whatnot. And then the area where you folks were camping, Weelaunee Park, People's Park, that's actually public land and is totally open, so it's not trespassing to be there, is my understanding. Is that correct?
Yes. So on the southeast side of the creek, it's called Entrenchment Creek Park. The movement has redubbed it Weelaunee People's Park after the Muskogee people, the indigenous people of this land, called the land Weelaunee. So we're trying to sort of honor them and restore that aspect to it. So in Weelaunee People's Park, it is currently Ryan Millsap, a property developer, is trying to build his Hollywood Studios, Black Hall Studios. He's trying to build a big Hollywood studio, clear cut the forest on Weelaunee to build his studio, and he does not legally own that land. He is currently fighting it in the courts, and he had purchased a different area of land nearby, which he didn't find suitable for building on, and so he tried to arrange a land swap with the city of Atlanta. It was very quietly, quickly tried to pass through without people noticing, but it's currently being fought in the courts, so he still does not legally have the right to this land that he's trying to switch out. He already clear-cut the land that he purchased, and part of this deal was that this clear-cut mud hole was going to become Michelle Obama Park. It's significantly smaller than the land that he's trying to acquire now that is currently a forest and Weelaunee People's Park. It's hundreds of acres of forest. This forest actually has a really turbulent history of obviously genocide as the first colonizers came, and then it was a slave plantation for hundreds of years, and then a prison plantation for years after that. In the 60s, it finally closed down, and this forest has been growing for the past 60 years. So we have an adolescent forest here that's very healthy, but needs to be continued to be nurtured so that it can really reach its full potential. And what they want to do is cut it short and build just more propaganda.
Wild to me that they're charging you with trespassing if that's the case, because clearly the land is still owned and it's in the public trust. I was there at the park. I saw the stop work order. It's right in the front there. So as long as that injunction is in place, Ryan can't really develop the land, yet all of these agencies came in and cleared it. Okay.
Yeah, so it seems to be part of their strategy is to remove as many people as possible so that we can't properly document and resist the development, and then to turn the other way as Ryan sends in his goons to tear up the park. So as I said, they sent, after the arrest in December, when the movement was weaker, they sent in the bulldozers and plowed a path straight through the forest and straight into base camp. And obviously tore down lots of trees doing that, and then they tore up the public paved bike path. It seems like the goal is to make it look like it's not actually a public park, that nobody really cares about it. It's not inviting. They want to make it as uninviting as possible so that nobody will stand up to defend the park once they decide to destroy it.
So I think a big part of your activism of why this protest for Cop City exists is about environment, climate change issues. I think people have been focused more on the police side of it, but I think the environment is pretty much well connected, and I know that one of the things, for example, that people are concerned about is the lead and arsenic created by the gun shooting ranges that might get into the South River and not. So, what are some of the environmental concerns that you might have?
Yeah, well, so like, trees are some of nature's most powerful filters, and they just give us life and resources. So what trees do, they hold the ground together. They soak up a mature forest will soak up millions of gallons of water. So when a rainstorm comes, like there's predicted to be worse and worse and worse and worse rainstorms and tornadoes and hurricanes coming because of this climate crisis that we're currently in. This forest, this 300-acre forest, is soaking up all that water and preventing flooding throughout Atlanta, but especially in southeast Atlanta and DeKalb County, where it's a majority-minority population. It's mostly people of color. So those people will be completely decimated by rainstorms when they lose this essential water absorption sponge, essentially. The other thing that trees do, of course, is they filter the air. Like I said, there's an abundance of healthy lichens and mushrooms in this forest. Usnea is a species that's highly indicative of very clean air, and there's a lot of it in the forest. So these trees they not only filter and clean the air that we breathe, that we depend on to live, they also soak up the carbon dioxide in the air that is the key greenhouse gas causing the warming of the climate. So this forest is an essential. It's not just about tree hugging and we want the environment's good. It's literally life or death right now. This is emergency relief, emergency response, basically, because this is our greatest protection against the coming chaos of the 21st century.
Yeah, no, climate change is an existential threat, and I think more people are coming around to realize that now. Also, I wanted to talk a little bit about the sense of community that you folks developed living there in the camp with each other. I mean, you really kind of had, it sounds like, your own little town set up.
Yeah, so I grew up in white suburbia, pretty classic, supposedly the good life. And I felt very lonely my whole life, honestly. Very isolated from my neighbors, very alienated in school. And I think this is extremely common. You see this angst among the younger people for the past decades and decades, younger people of the white middle class have been very upset. So if life is so great, why are these young people so upset? I really think it has to do with community, that we are not living in community with one another. We don't tend to each other's needs. We don't have social gatherings where you can be there without buying something. And what I found in the forest was truly the most neighborly, loving place I've ever been in my life. And everybody there is giving what they can and taking what they need. There's an abundance of food, there's an abundance of clothing, there's an abundance of shelter, there's an abundance of water, and all this in the woods. It was truly like a deprivation scenario. We're not living in houses, we're living in tents, and I felt so much more secure than I ever have in my life, because I knew that everyone around me had my back, and I could confide in the people around me, and I knew that they cared about me as a person, I cared about them. And gathering at night and huddling together to stay warm and cooking collective meals for each other, the struggle of coming home every day and having to come up with something to cook for myself. I didn't have to do that. I could cook once a week, cook a big meal for my friends, and really invest the heart and soul into that food, and then know that every other meal would be somebody else would handle it. And just the collective experience, I think, is something that humanity evolved collectively. We are the most social creatures on the planet. Of course, the human experience is designed around cooperation, collaboration. It's a complete fantasy that humanity exists to compete with one another. Obviously, competition is part of it. I'm not going to deny that, but collaboration is so deep in our nature, and we have such a capacity for love and kinship. And Wilani really showed me that it's true.